Hey everybody. Finally I'm back. I'm sorry for the delay in not having a video last week. The good news is I got a new MacBook, which is awesome because it's really fast and is like at least a solid 2 to 5 pounds lighter, so I'm not hauling around this big heavy thing. The bad thing is that we're having a hard time downloading all of the stuff that was on that one to this one, and so anyhow, long story short, I just didn't get the video recorded. However, I did want to follow up on a few things from the last couple of weeks. So I just kind of have a random list of stuff that I wanted to talk about, hoping that this is helpful content for you. But so as you know, I think I've kind of disclosed this earlier, but I'm really have done a lot of work in the Myers-Briggs type indicator. I was trained on using it in 2004. I did my dissertation using the MBTI and have been doing training with a variety of groups since 2005, so for a long time. And it's not so much that I'm like this big theory head or a big, psychological type person, but I just have found the tool so helpful to me personally and professionally. It's really helped me a great deal. So I just want to spend a little bit of time on the third preference scale, which has to do with our basis of decision making. And I'm hoping that this might provide some insight for all of you. So what's interesting and fairly common in working with health administration students is that most of them typically would share that their preference for basis of decision making, or that third preference scale, is logical implications or thinking. And then there's always a really good solid group of people with preferences for impact on people or feeling. So if you remember, this is the third preference scale, and the letters that you would get would be either a T or an F. So a lot of people who are attracted to healthcare, especially in the clinical side, have feeling preferences. Some of the training I do is around a program that uses type. Is called FlexCare, and the authors of that material have come up with some additional descriptors that I think it makes it a little bit easier to understand, more so than what Jean did in the YouTube video that you watched. So if you remember, let me see if I can do this quickly. The preference scale has two polar opposite ends. One is T, one is F. The T is thinking, and the F is the preferences or feeling. So hopefully you can see that. The picture, if you can keep this kind of in the back of your mind, and this is something that the additional authors added to the training that I think adds some clarity, and if given the opportunity, I'll probably move to FlexCare more and do my own video instead of using Jean's, because though she's like a big deal in type, I think this material is better. So anyhow, I don't know if you can see that, but try to keep this in the back of your mind. I'll hold it up while I'm talking. But so FlexCare offers kind of an additional insight into the type world, especially around this particular preference scale. So those with thinking preferences, which are a lot of you, basically the preference for how you base decisions is using logic. So you rely on principles, especially those that follow a non-personal logic. So if this, then that. You give more of an emphasis, typically, to objective information, and you look for outcomes that make sense. The picture that I show here describes a a situation. Let's say that you, as the thinking person, or any thinking person, is put in the position of having to make a decision that's going to affect a group of people. Let's say it's even going to affect them. When it comes time to making the decision, the thinking person will remove themselves from the group to make a decision based on logic, especially non-personal logic. So they'll likely put together kind of a pro-con list, weigh the options, and come up with the most logical decision, even if the decision would negatively impact them. So over my career, I've worked with lots and lots of people with thinking preferences, and sometimes their decision actually negatively impacts them. I've had a couple who have done consulting work or project work and have actually eliminated their own positions as part of the decision making. So, which, I guess that is very logical. So anyhow, so that's thinking. On the other side of that, we have those with preferences for feelings. And the flex language offers the additional descriptor of impact on people. So when it comes time to make decisions based on people, they will consider the impact of the decision on those people. So they typically make decisions based on values, especially those that follow or that they consider, values, especially people-oriented values. They give emphasis to subjective information, and they typically will strive for a harmonious outcome. They want to please everyone. So the picture here, again, is a circle with 3 people within it. So if somebody with feeling preferences is asked to facilitate a decision, even if the decision has absolutely nothing to do with them, let's say they're being asked to evaluate and make recommendations for layoffs in a department. Even if they don't work for the organization, it's a consulting gig or what have you, they will add themselves to the organization or the unit being considered to make a decision based on the values of the people. So what does that look like? They will typically consider the values of the organization and the values of the people when making recommendations. So I'm trying to think. These are typically people who will consider mission, vision, values, what's important to the organization. And it's not that they don't use logic, but they also consider the values of the group. So it's just very important for them to consider the values of people. They're very value-driven individuals. So so what's interesting about this is, let me just take this the next step further. So those with thinking preferences, verbal and nonverbal cues that you typically run into with thinking individuals or people with thinking preferences is that they typically come across as being a little bit more cool. They have a cooler affect, so you don't really feel like you want to run up and give them a big hug. They just have kind of a separation between them and you. And that is because they're using logic to drive decisions. It doesn't mean that they don't like people. It doesn't mean that they don't like you. It just means that that's the basis of their decision making. They also will typically engage in a lot of questions. And the questions kind of drill right to the point of it. So oftentimes, especially if you're somebody with feeling preferences, you'll feel like you're being tested. And they could actually be doing that. So they might ask you questions where they already know the answers to, and they're comparing your answers against what they believe they already know. So it can be a bit intimidating, and it can kind of shake you up a bit when somebody tests you. But if you can realize that what they're doing is trying to establish your logic, it can help a bit. But let's think about that a little bit further. So why would somebody with thinking preferences choose to test somebody on whether they can get the answer right to their question? Why do they test? Why do they test others? So think about that. In the years of training where I've done this training for multiple groups, I anticipate that there'll be a few people in the group that will ask me questions about the Myers-Briggs or the reliability and the validity of it. They might even throw out challenging concepts. Like one time I was training a group of people, and I remember this guy in the front row said to me, well, all you're doing is you're saying that we should mirror other people. And he was doing that, and it came across as a bit of a challenge as a test. And it kind of threw me off a bit, but when I sat and thought about it, it's like, well, yes, what I'm doing is suggesting that you mirror other people to a point. So, but my just responding to his question in an honest way, an upfront way, kind of satisfied his thinking preferences. So anyhow, why do you think people do that? People with thinking preferences, are they trying to hurt people or devalue them in front of a large group of people, maybe embarrass them? Typically the answer is no. They're not trying to do that, but they're trying to test people for the purposes of having confidence in them. So the testing comes to help them be able to trust you. So if you think about this, people with thinking preferences challenge or test or ask these probing questions that they believe they know the answers to in an effort to establish trust. Once trust is established, then they can more readily participate in the conversation, and they will listen to you and perhaps even apply some of the concepts or ideas that you are suggesting. So when you look at it from the perspective of trust, then it makes more sense. So for a couple of you in the class that have feeling preferences, when people challenge you or ask you questions, don't be threatened by it or think that they're out to make you look bad or to embarrass you. What they're trying to do is establish trust. And once I started understanding that, because I work with a lot of T's, it made sense to me, and it helped me not take what they're saying so personal. By the way, because I have feeling preferences, that's why I'm speaking this way. So it helped me. It helps me in my career and in my personal life not get so worked up about these things like, well, how dare he, and try to make me look bad and blah, 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 blah. So on the other side of this, we have those with people, the thinking people that are interacting with people with feeling preferences. And oftentimes, nonverbal and verbal cues that a person with feeling preferences will share is they typically come across as being very warm and friendly. They'll kind of seek to please, and they'll reach out to create a relationship with you. So if you and I were first meeting and you had feeling preferences, I might say, well, how are you, Betty? And you would come back to say, I'm fine, and how are you? Okay, so you're constantly trying to connect with me or create this this relationship. So for those of you who are have thinking preferences, this might kind of resonate with you. And you might think, I've always wondered why. Why are they doing that? So let's think on that for a minute. If you're interacting with somebody on a professional level, and they have this kind of little warm chit chat where they're like, so how's the weather? Or, how's your dog doing? Or the last time I saw you, your daughter was sick. How's she doing? I mean, why do they do that stuff? It's so inefficient. It's not what the meeting's about, and you might find it somewhat annoying. The reason they do that is because they're trying to connect with you, because in a feeling person's mind, if they can connect with you, they can establish a level of trust. So if they can trust you, then they can believe you, follow along with what you are trying to accomplish. You gain a lot of credibility with them. So if you think about these two perspectives. One is testing to trust. One is trying to create relationships with you so that there's trust. So, and I would argue as a leader or a manager, you can't do anything unless you can establish this level of trust with your team. So, why do I bring this up? I bring it up because most of you, and maybe it was because of the discussion board, we're talking about this concept of a compliment sandwich. So, and I just wanted to follow up and say that that is a very good technique for thinking people to use with people with feeling preferences. And why is it? Because you are creating this relationship with them by, the cookie. So you're trying to say, hi, Betty. It has been just such a joy having you on the team. You're so good at what you do, whatever that compliment is in the front. However, we have an issue that we need to address. Here's the issue. And then you follow up with the other cookie and say, you know what, I know we're going to be successful at this. I'm here to help you and coach you. If you need some additional help on this, please let me know. Okay. So what you're trying to do with that compliment sandwich is that you're trying to establish this level of trust with these people. And again, I just want to share that it's not that feeling people really are looking for you as a friend. They're not going to show up your doorstep on Thanksgiving Day and say, hey, can I have dinner with you? What they're trying to do is just connect, because somewhere in their mind, in my mind, because as a feeling person, I believe that if I connect with a person on a human-to-human basis, that you're going to do the right thing for me. You're going to lead me, manage me, so that it is going to be for the benefit of me as well as the team. I feel there's a trust between us. So that's what's going on. For those of you with feeling preferences, when you're interacting with people with thinking, they do come across as more cool, non-personal. And that is only because they are using logic to make decisions. So when they ask you questions, just give a simple answer to demonstrate that, yes, I do know what I'm talking about. You can count on me. I've got this. So I don't make all my decisions based on warm and fuzzy stuff. I do have logic within me, as much as you as a thinker have feelings within you too. So anyhow, I hope that helps. But that TF scale is huge and has really helped me understand my strengths and understand areas that challenge me, and to come up with a technique on how I can be effective in personal and professional relationships. So anyhow, I hope that helps. So just a couple other things. In week 3, we talked about teams, and I just wanted to reiterate that in teams, other people are watching you and how you hold others accountable. This is a hard lesson I learned. I worked with about 7 faculty at my past institution. All but one was a thinking preference, and some of these meetings got to be a tiny bit brutal. I mean, honest to God, I used to go back to my office and just cry for a while, because it was a lot of conflict going on. Conflict is good, though. I mean, you want to allow differing opinions. That's how you get to new stuff, right? However, I made a mistake as a leader in that I didn't establish ground rules and hold people accountable to them. And as a result of that, others were watching me not holding various members of the team accountable. And so then that indirectly communicated to them, yeah, you can misbehave too. So about a year or so before I left, we had a pretty intense meeting where I said, hey, you know what? We're going to establish some ground rules. And we did a really nice job as a team coming up with rules that would facilitate productive meetings while demonstrating respect and allowing for differing opinions. I put those on a piece of, actually at the top of all the meeting agendas were our ground rules. And before I'd start any meeting, we would review the ground rules, and then I kind of took on a new responsibility of making sure people were following the ground rules. And if they weren't, I would talk to them after the meeting. And some of these people were like really, really smart and a lot older than I was and a lot more mature and a lot more accomplished in life. And again, they were thinking people too. So holding them accountable communicated to them a level of respect. And I think they respected me more because I was doing that. So anyhow, I just wanted to share this whole concept of ground rules. If you're running meetings and they tend to get a little out of control, ground rules, okay? Also, let me see, I had one more thought on that. So when it comes to, I just wanted to talk, some of you in your work, I mean, I'm like so impressed with the level of depth in your response, and really impressed with your ability to pull in other materials into your answers, and your citations are just a joy. So I love how you're pulling in other materials, but then also giving credit to the authors of those. That requires discipline, and it just makes your responses so much more solid and trustworthy because you're showing me that you're connecting all these dots. So brilliant work there. What I'd like to see you push yourself a little bit more is the applying the content to your own practice. So once you analyze it, then turn it internal and think, so, when it comes to candid conversations, or when it comes to dysfunctional teams, what do I see? And going forward, how will this content impact me as a leader? So if you let all of the concepts that we're talking about in this class just live up here in your head, it's going to stay in your head, and it's not going to infiltrate your practice as a leader. You have to go to that next step of starting to apply it and thinking, you know what, that makes sense to me. Let me think about how am I going to run my next meeting? How am I going to consider this TNF? Because I realize that I think Bob is a thinking person, or I think Betty is a feeling person, and that's been annoying me in these meetings, and this is a new way of how I'm going to interpret it and look at it. So I really challenge you to go to that next level. And I know it sounds kind of warm and fuzzy and rainbows and unicorns and glitter and crap, but it's not. That's where true development comes, is your ability to take this thinking stuff, this stuff that lives in your head, and drive it down into your behaviors. If it doesn't make a difference in how you practice as a leader or a manager in your organization, then really, why learn it at all? Because it's just going to live up in your head. And we all know those people that are super smart in their head. They have book knowledge, but they don't know how to lead people. And fundamentally, healthcare leaders know how to lead people, because this is a very people-oriented industry where you're making impacts on the quality and the quantity of people's lives, not just in your patients, but in your staff and people also. So anyhow, final thing, I made one change to the week 7, your final leadership model. So pay attention and read the discussion board. Again, I'm asking you to evaluate yourself based on your own model, so make sure you look at that. And I hope all of you are getting out and scheduling these interviews with leaders for that final exercise. If you're running into any problems with that, please be in touch. Again, I'm happy to give you extensions if you ask for those in advance. Otherwise, the due dates stand. So anyhow, I hope you have a great week. We're within a couple of weeks of wrapping this course up, so it's really gone fast. I look forward to hearing from you. If you have questions, I'm around. Busy doing lots and lots of stuff on this side of the campus, but you're my priority. You're what this program's all about. So just stay in touch. Have a great week. Bye.